Welcome back. Today, I am excited to invite you into a very open, honest, and real conversation about women's health. As a team of all women, we have the amazing opportunity to talk about our experiences living as a woman, navigating our own health experiences together. And we recognize how powerful it is to have that safe space to share what our lived experience is and how frustrating sometimes it can be to navigate this. And that the most important part about it is not navigating it alone. So today I invite you into a conversation where we dig into our personal stories around navigating health as a woman and what that has meant to us, what our experiences have been thus far, and what we hope will come in the future. Join us for this amazing conversation, and I hope that you feel seen and heard and have a group of women surrounding you to support you in your women's health journey as well. Welcome, everybody. I love these times where we get together to talk about a topic that, while it strikes each of us collectively, we all also have our own personal stories around a topic and get the chance in these conversations to share our unique perspectives and really paint a broader picture about specific topics. And this month, we're going to talk a little bit about women's health because, we're told, science has done a lot of studying of the human body, mostly oriented on the male body. And only as of late has that science started to evolve to say, hey, hold on a second. Women's bodies are not exactly the same. And while that's a more complicated system to understand, we should understand it and not assume the same logic. That's how I perceive what has been happening and evolving for us. But I know, as a wonderful group of women, we each have our own stories of navigating our own health and wellness journeys as it relates to that. And I would love for us to just share what we've experienced, any conflicts, things that have come up for us as we've tried to understand our own bodies and to get the support we needed based on what we were experiencing when there might not be an easy path forward. So that's the plan for today to talk about and dig into, because I know it's an important component for each of us as well. So would anybody like to kick us off with some thoughts or reflection based on the topic?
I can jump in because in everything that we've talked about, I think one of the first things that I realized was not balanced when talking about men's health and women's health is the foundation of what makes us women and how we aren't the same person every day. We have hormones that are impacting everything that we're doing, everything like every day. And that so much later in life of the cycles and things that we can support ourselves through each of our cycles. And it was a game changer for me. And it was very frustrating that I didn't learn this at a younger age to be aware that this was happening in my body, because I think a lot of the messages that we received are do these things and everything will be okay, when those things might work, week 1, but week 3 we need to support ourselves in a different way. And once I learned like cycle syncing and tracking my cycle and really paying attention to how I'm feeling throughout the month, it was a game changer. And that kind of goes all the way to what foods we should be eating to support ourselves during those times. And I think all I felt like I was doing was going through this cycle of just getting frustrated with myself, gaining momentum in week 1 and week 2, having all this energy. And then I get to week 3 and I'm like, why can't I just do the things that I was doing in week 1 and week 2? And it just feels so defeating. And then I just felt like I was just like in this constant cycle of just getting frustrated with myself versus understanding that that's the natural flow. And there is beauty in week 3, week 4. It just might look different than week 1 and week 2. So I think that is kind of like one of the biggest aha moments I have had it with when it comes to women's health. And it blends into a lot of different things, but I think that was just the most obvious of how did we not learn this at a younger age? Like the basics of what make us women. And so I know it's a big one, but that's really where my mind goes when I think of this.
I remember learning, like, it's menstrual cycle, right? But it was all about the time of the month, right? Like that phrase like stuck with me so long. And it's like, it's not that time of the month, like the whole month counts.
Yeah.
And how it was always seen as like this negative thing. Oh, it's the time of the month, like you got to be careful, don't say the wrong thing. And so it just became this very negative thing of when women are in that time of the month. And so you almost were ashamed of it, and you would hide it, and we like, as women, I wasn't as open talking to other women. And I think once you find like those besties that you can have the real conversations, you're like, oh, we're all experiencing very similar things, this is normal. And like normalizing those types of conversations, I think were just crucial in me learning my own body. And it was a lot of doing my own research and talking to people, and really, like, it wasn't an obvious thing, and we really had to dig for that information. And that goes into the rabbit hole of just like studies and how, when they're testing something, how it's mostly male dominated because women have these cycles and they aren't like this good base to like do studies on. But that's not a good enough excuse for me.
Yeah. Maybe there.
Yeah. That's the reason why you should do more studies on, like with women. So
yeah, the reminder that you're evoking for me is I heard this, and this one stuck with me in the last couple of years, and it's so obvious, but men operate by the sun cycle and we're the moon cycle, and just in general, like they're just two different roles, not the same role, different roles, and it's the same for them every day. And I'm like, oh, that must be boring. Right. But then to like decouple myself from trying to be that, like, you just struck for me like, oh, that's why I can't be consistent. Oh, that's a little bit freeing. There might be other reasons too, but
I had so much guilt with the word consistency for the longest time. And I think it just plays into, there's a reason why we can't do the same thing every day throughout the month. And that it is freeing. I think it is freeing once you start to understand this and give yourself grace and talk to more women. Honestly, have this conversation more. So yeah, I'm thankful we're having this conversation, even though there's still a little bit of like, oh, is this okay to talk about? Still having that as part of the dialogue. But I think the more people that talk about it, the more women will have their own conversations in their own circles.
100%.
Yeah. I think about like my mom and her generation. And I know that and my mom's like, she was like a hippie, in the hippie era, and like women's liberation movement and all of burning the bras. And like, she was there for all that. And she was very, very much, involved in all that. And so she like probably would have even been, more in circles or like connected to women who were talking more about like just understanding our bodies, that kind of thing. But even she, like now that I'm like possibly in or approaching perimenopause, like there could be various things going on. I've tried to kind of dig into like my mom's experience. Like, what do you remember happening with your body, when you were, moving into perimenopause, and it's like she doesn't even remember. And I think part of that is like just not even getting that foundational education about what all is involved, when that's happening. But then just go back even further, you're talking about, like, Christina, how like it was later in life that you really started to understand, right? Like probably most of us are like this, and I feel like I still I could have a much better grasp. I really could. Like, actually, it's kind of embarrassing. It's like one of those things, like, we wish people would teach from the very beginning in school or wherever you're learning, like, teach us how to cook, teach us how to do our taxes, these things. It's like, that was one of those foundational things that we all should have really, like, when we think about like sex ed, which I guess is when we first started learning about that in school. And I didn't really get like much education at home about it. Like, that is so limited. Like, I felt like I basically learned nothing, So, and when they tried to cover that in school. And so it's just wild how poorly that is covered, how little people we understand, not just as women, but all of us, about our bodies, and definitely women's bodies, and I just think it could be done so much better. And I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation, and I'm so grateful that, I think there is a shift happening, just more younger generations talking about it more, learning about it more, and hopefully we'll just see that continue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And can I ask you, because that is a great, like, about your mother's journey, because I think once we reach a certain age and we are, all of a sudden we think we understand something, and then it's changing again because we're going through this whole new phase. And I will say that I am clearly in perimenopause. I've just embraced it, and I'm just trying to learn everything I can about it. And I've had conversations with my OBGYN about it. And I thought, okay, this is another woman that is caring for me and has experienced this and talks to women all the time. And I asked her, like, these are what I'm experiencing, like, anything else that I can do to help, support my body. And her response was, there's really, like, everybody's different. So talk to your mom about her experience. You'll probably have a very similar experience as your mom. And very similar to you, Katie, I talked to my mom, and she's just like, I don't even think she understood perimenopause. Like, she understood when she was in menopause. It's a very clear signal when you get to that point. So talking to her about, like, I don't even think she understood something was going on. So for that to be the advice that I got as a woman from my OBGYN, I was just like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, so, I tried to talk to my mom, but at that time, no one was really talking about before menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if people were really talking about menopause. I think it also goes to, like, women, we just suck it up. We're dealing with another thing, and we just keep on going, like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just also part of that generation too. They just, here's another thing we're handling, and that's that. So I don't think she even took a moment to pause and be like, oh, this is, the reason I'm feeling this way is because of this. And so you saying that just brings up, yeah, I've tried to have conversations with my, with my health professionionals, and that's the response that I'm getting. So I'm just like, okay, so back to the drawing board.
Right.
Well, I love that we're like doing it differently now. Like, everyone is talking about it, and it's wonderful. Like, I was in the bathroom the other day with my son, and he's like in the stall with me. He's asking me questions, and we've talked about this many times. At this point, he's 6, and so he's like, oh yeah, well, it's happening again, so you're not going to have a baby next month. And I'm like, that's right, there's no baby in there, so like, getting rid of it. But there was clearly an older woman in the stall, like, near us, who was making like harumph noises basically. And I was like, you got to get over it. Like, for one, your body did this too, presumably.
It's nothing to be ashamed about, I think.
I know. And I'm like, I want my son to be able to have like the words for this and be able to have the conversations with women about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like and especially because my brother talked to one of our family friends when he was growing up. He was like probably 7 or 8 or something. And he was like, I think my mom and my sister might be dying. Like he saw we were bleeding and he was like, oh, are they okay? Like, I'm really worried. And so then, but we got it, then we got it from the family friend and we had to do the whole like conversation. And I was like, that's not how it should go.
No. Oh, that's scary.
Right.
That's scary.
Well, I think that whole generation just never talked about anything. Like, I think that it was very, very quiet. Like, I don't remember a lot of conversations with my mom, and nothing bad. There was no ill will there. They just weren't open about anything. And I don't think that they knew if there was changes. They just dealt with it on their own, and they never really shared. And so I think that's the fun about being in this generation, is that everybody's talking about everything. It's fun and not fun, but at the same time, you feel less alone, and you feel less crazy, because you're like, oh, everybody's there. It's everybody in my age and stage is in the same place. And so when we're all acting crazy, it just feels better. And not in a crazy way. We don't know what's happening. You know what I mean? We're just trying to step into this new space, and being educated about it is my favorite thing, that everybody's talking about, making light of it too. That helps, because I feel like there is a lot to be laughed about. There is a lot to be, talked about with it. Like, laughed in a, like, let's not take it so seriously. Let's take it a little bit more in stride. Like, this is happening to everyone our age, or all the women our age, and we should feel a little less different about it. So I appreciate that there's a lot more conversation about it.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think laughter just makes it, like, it helps us normalize it, right? Like, it takes the edge off of being able to talk about it, or have that, reduces that charge that might come with it. And I really appreciate when there's like, and I think education stems from the fact that we have to like bring it to the surface, and then we'll figure out how to like change the education, change who and how, but like, until we just start talking about it, I don't think you can educate, right? Like, there's a kind of natural process to bringing it out into the light first, and then going from there. But well,
I do feel like that's where a friend of mine refers to it as reverse puberty. And then there's also the phases of, like, for my phase of my house is getting emptier by the day, by the years, so I have that happening at the same time. So there is both of those things are happening, and I'm not sure of what's going to happen next, or so it feels good to see everybody else kind of in that same, because we're all planners, we're all structure, we're all people who we plan, we organize, we know what's going on. I'm like, I don't know what tomorrow is, so we'll see. And we'll just take that one as it comes.
Yeah, it's really like a new
era
approach to living. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Amanda, did you want to share anything before we?
Yeah, I think what's been coming up for me as I've been listening is, like, I think what you were saying, Jeanette, really was resonating with me, because I have 2 little boys, and like, they will be like, Mom, is it your luteal phase? Like, they can speak with that specific language.
So good.
And
it's amazing.
It makes me so happy that we have talked about it in such a way that they can, know about that. And something that I feel like, Carrie, when you were saying about the education, I'm like, this feels like something we've had to reclaim. Like, we've had to be like, okay, well, it's not going to be taught to us. So how do we figure this out ourselves? And, there's all these different tracking apps and stuff, but I feel like something that's felt so empowering to me is, like, on my app, my friends can be in there, and like my partner can view my cycle. And I'm just like, I love when a friend is saying something to me, and I'm like, let me quickly check where you are in your cycle, and be like, maybe let's reconsider that thing, right? Like, let's rethink about that a week from now. And I think having the shared language and knowledge has really allowed us to take this part of us back and figure out even more. If, like, the studies aren't being done, fine, but we are living in these bodies, and we can actually do a lot with like the knowledge that we have. And because I love the nervous system, and I cannot have a single conversation where I don't mention it, I think something that, like, really stood out to me kind of somewhat recently, as someone who like really pays attention to the nervous system, is that like, again, most of what we know about the nervous system has been created through the lens of the male body. And so the way our hormones work and all the fluctuations, not just related to our cycle, just like when we get triggered and things like that, you know, I think all people are different and have different patterns, but like women sometimes just show up a little bit differently in their nervous systems as well. And I actually don't even know enough about that to talk about it. And I think that's really interesting that there's always something more that we can learn about our very unique female experience.
I love that. And the fact that because the thing that I actually wanted to kind of bridge into next is really that, right? That we almost immediately, when we talk about women's health, go to our cycle. And yes, that is the cycle that we live with. And that is a key fundamental part. But truly, women's health is overall different. That is right? Like we tend to like, let's talk about women's health. Okay, let's talk about the menstrual cycle. It's like, right. But also the nervous system is different. It just operates differently because these chemical reactions in the body are different, right? And the inputs that men receive create a different output than the output for women, right? And that it really is all the systems of the body that are shifted to enable us to create life. Small feet, but you know that. and that moment of like, yes, that is fundamentally important, and at the same time it is so much more than that. So how do we hold both of those things to be true at the same time, that they're interwoven, but let's also not forget that it is the whole system is different. It's not just this like ticking time bomb that lives in our cavity, right? That like dictates everything else. I don't know. There's just something in that to me that like is an important reminder for myself that yes, this is important to learn, to nurture, to understand, to like work with. And there's so much more that's different in our body than just that, right? Like you can't just throw a uterus into a man's body and he'll experience womanhood, right? Like it's just different.
That's making me think about just like in general, like just the interconnectedness of everything, you know, like when we talk about the human body and how historically things have been so siloed when it comes to health, like and isolated. It's like, oh, we're just talking about women's health or like the menstrual cycle, but like it's literally all of it is all dancing together all the time. It's everything is affecting everything, you know? And that's true for all of us for sure. But probably like we've touched on a couple of times, like so much less like well understood in women's bodies than men's, but also in men's too, right? Like just this, it's all affecting everything. It's not just this one thing. Yeah, I think we have a long way to go for sure, you know, societally.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
I think the other thing too, to your point with all the things, I think the second thing that everybody always talks about is like the breast health, cervical health, like things like that. But I just recently learned that the heart health, that more women have cardiac disease than breast cancer. And I thought that was a really crazy statistic. I did not know that that was real because I thought so many people focus on breast cancer so much. And then to think that we need to focus on the cardiac health too. I'm going, oh, like, I mean, like you said, it all is working together, but how do we keep getting educated in the space that we can focus on in the stage that we're in? And I feel like that's a lot of our own research, but you know, listening and finding trusted sources too is hard. It's very hard.
And sharing with each other, you know, which I think is where, and that's like so much of, you know, the origin story of the human race. There's a big piece there of that too, right? Just like we want to like have all our favorite and most trusted things in one place, right? Because we know how challenging it can be to find those people and those resources. So yeah, it is like we're always learning. I think it's like we're just gonna keep on learning, but it almost can feel like this underground conversation of like trying to find people that are having the conversation that actually resonates with how we think about health. you know, that can actually really help us build that foundation, you know, when it comes to health and women's health specifically.
Yeah. I love what you say, bring it all into the same place, because at the same moment, it's like, because we want to know all the things, but also because it's so interconnected that as soon as you pull one string over here, like to Erin's point, like I pulled on breast health and all of a sudden, wait, cardiac health came out. Like I wasn't expecting that. That was not the plan. Like, but that's how the body systems work, right? So it can't just be siloed into these unique spaces. And instead, how do we understand that? I mean, the immediate thought that I have when we talk about breast health and cardiac health is they sit on top of each other. Why wouldn't we think that somehow there's like energetic alignment between them? But we'll get to that level of consciousness at some point. But I think this like interconnectedness and the pulling of the strings and then moving through, personally for me, has been the most challenging part about moving through my own unique health and wellness journey, because something happens over here and I go to speak to somebody about that specific thing, and it's like I kind of reach a dead end, right? And then okay, well, that wasn't it. And so, okay, now I'll go over here. And now I have to find this person over here. I pull that string and I kind of hit another dead end. And I just feel exhausted a lot of times hitting dead ends, and ultimately knowing that there's, you know, a doorway closes and a window opens. But at the same time, that like repeated process over and over feels like, to me, what's so broken about the system at this moment, because there is no guidance to help you move when you go down a certain path. Like I could talk about skin, right? Skin is just the outward expression for ourselves. And I know it's so much more than that. So, okay, I go gut health, wall, go hormones, wall, go, you know, stress, wall. And it's like, okay, this is still not changed. Now, where do I go? Right. And it really requires a lot to keep pulling all of those threads.
And throw in muscle mass and going through perimenopause and, you know, getting to this point in our lives where we're like, oh, I wish I knew about this. You know, like luckily I grew up as an athlete. So I feel like I had like, you know, like just naturally like, okay, like I know how to do that thing. I know how to like, but building muscle later in life all of a sudden becomes completely different for women. And honestly, that's kind of been a struggle for me, is you're pulling all the strings. And again, you're like, oh, I feel like I'm starting to understand these things, but now everything's changing again. So now I have to feel like I'm pulling new strings, and I'm sure in a few years, I'm going to be pulling another set of new strings because I'm going through something new, and no one's really, like you're saying, guiding you through this, and not even talking about the mental part that just naturally happens because things are changing, and you're, you know, especially, you know, if you have kids and they're starting to leave the home, or kids are growing up, or, you know, you're now having to manage older parents, like there's all of this while you're changing at the same time. And there's really not this source of where can I go, not like to just feel like normal, to feel like this is okay, this is natural, this is something that I'm going through, but I will get through it. And here's some supportive things to get me through those. But as you said, I think we're all different. And I think that's what my OBGYN was trying to get to. It's like, I really can't help you. You're going to be different than me and different than this next person. And you're just like, what do I do with that information? Honestly,
but that's so helpful.
And then like, you talk to your primary care doctor, you know, I have a few others that I talk to, and you're starting to try to piece this information together, and they all have a different story. And I do have all women doctors. You know, I've done that for a reason, to like see myself in them, and they understand women's bodies more than, like, you know, men do. But now I'm understanding there are limitations for health professionals as well. And I think that's coming back to the human array and why, you know, we started this, because I think everything kind of has its own limitations, and we need to pull in as much of that information together to get a better picture of the full story. I don't, we have a long way to go, as we're saying, but I do feel a little bit more, I feel a little bit more educated now, but I still do feel frustrated. That I feel like I do feel alone. I don't know if everybody, like, I have women in my life, but I am experiencing a very unique individual experience. So sometimes it can be lonely.
Absolutely. I think, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I was talking to someone recently who was coming off of hormonal birth control, and her doctor was like, well, if it's too much, you can go back on it. Like if it's, if you can't handle it. And, she's like, yeah, so if I get too emotional or something, then I can just start taking it again. And I was like, I think you can expect that you're going to be very emotional for quite a while. And I'm like, and here's the studies and whatever. But it was just so interesting to hear her say that the advice was, oh, you can just give up because it's going to be hard.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a lot of personal stories with birth control in general, because that narrative is there, like, oh, this is a problem. Here's how you take care of it, is you make it go away.
Yeah.
Right. And so I personally got off of birth control a couple of years ago. I worked to detox my body to the best of my ability, moving through that process so that it was a more gentle transition, because honestly, I'd been on some form of birth control or having children for 20 years. That counts. That should require some sort of care and support transitioning from that. But I had never, ever experienced a normal period, ever. And I didn't know what that was like. Now I do, because I worked really hard to say, no, I want to get to baseline. I want to know what it should feel like, because I did all the things to just make it go away. Just, that's annoying. Go away. But I don't think that served me, or at least not in my 40-year-old body. It's not serving me.
Do we know what the conversation is like around birth control with the younger generation? Is it as normalized as it was for, it was just the obvious choice? This is, oh, you're at this age, there's a chance you can get pregnant if you're, if you're active, and do this and then be put on this thing. I never did well on birth control. So I wasn't on it for a long period of time, personally, but hear a lot of stories, and I'm just wondering if that conversation has shifted at all with the younger generation and kind of how they guide them through that experience, because that's also, why is it always on the I feel like we're always the ones solving the problems.
Yeah, Erin, I'd be curious if, since you have kids in the kind of adolescent ages, what the talk is. I mean, obviously there's probably different circles talking about different things, but I'm just kind of curious what you hear from that age range.
That was a definite phase that we, my daughter was an athlete, still is, but so everything started really late for her. But then because it was so late, that the concentration on birth control plus Gardasil plus all the things were wanting to come at one time, and it was, to be honest, it was scary, because I was thinking she had taken such a long time to start, and so that I felt like catch up, and so we had to really kind of figure out what was best for her, and then so we didn't, we felt like it was at the time isn't right for the Gardasil, and then the conversation goes to birth control as soon as they any kind of acne, any kind of thing. So even is where it kind of just rips the band-aid really fast, to be honest. There's not a lot of that prepares you conversations, and so people her age have been on it for so long based on acne. That's the first start of the conversation, which is strange. You wouldn't think that. I think they use it a little bit as a gateway, but that's opinion, so I won't get into that. But there's not a conversation. They say immediately helps control the hormones so that the acne won't be bad, but then there's no conversation for the birth control. And so, you know, I don't want to be the one educating her just because I went through it. I feel like there's a lot too that came with it. So, talking to the OB, they're very driven on the birth control, but they're all this generation with that group is very, very cautious. They're not going to take exactly what you tell them right away, which I don't think we really did. I don't think we listened as much as I think we did. I don't remember that part of somebody telling me what to do and just doing it. But they are very cautious of what they take. They're not, you know, much rather not take the pill. That's a lot of them. And they'll say that they are, they'll say that they are doing it for acne, but not so much for that because they agree it should be shared. When the conversation is a lot of that, they think it should be shared responsibility between. That's my group. I'm sure a lot of different, I was very involved, especially because it took her so long to start. Like she was almost 18. So that was really late. But she's tiny and she was an athlete. So her BMI was like less than 2%. It was really not what the way I was in high school. So yeah, but they did put her on the pill for regulation of that. And I was hesitant because I feel like our bodies do kind of anyway. So we really wanted to wait. Which then caused her to be so late. We had a different, unique experience. A lot of her friends also had, you know, very unique experiences.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting to hear the generation just kind of being a little bit more cautious, and I think we might not have had the wherewithal to push back maybe as much as we could do now, right? Hindsight is 2020, but I think we create the opportunity for them to do it, and that's really powerful to be able to even allow the conversation to unfold differently. I don't know that it felt that way for me in that moment.
Well, and they come from that generation that was mature enough to know what was happening during COVID. So that to me really feels like that's when the first conversation came up for everyone to say, we have to do our own research to decide if this is what's best for us. I feel like that was the first time in my life that anybody ever didn't just, they questioned whether it was whoever did what, right or wrong. There's no opinion there, but I think that was the first time. And so they grew up in that. They were like, wait, we should ask questions. And so I think that's where they're really all of everything they do. They ask, they always want a second opinion. You know, even when a collarbone broke, they were like, let's talk to 3 people. Okay. Like, so there's lots of things that they, I think they're doing better. I do think that I think they have access to more information too. So then it's discerning who's their trusted people and kind of where they're getting their guidance, but trying to feed them right people instead of saying, this is what I want you to do. Cause now I don't have that space. I have the space of saying, how about we find the right person to guide you, like the educated person or the person that's aware.
Yeah.
Instead of,
I love that.
Jenny down the street.
The multiple opinions. I think that is kind of like a little bit universal for women where you're like, well, are you sure? Because now you can see, like, especially with just like the internet, you know, when I was coming up, I heard the thing about acne too. And I was like, that's still, I'm not about it. But now I would be down a deep rabbit hole of like anything anyone ever wants me to take. Right.
Yeah.
Or just, you know, like surgeries or options for my kids, like all of that, like questioning.
Yeah. So many questions.
We them to not answer their questions on TikTok. Like, please don't tell me you got that from the doctor on TikTok. And they're like, yeah. Sorry, Katie, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I just think that's what really stood out for me from what you just shared, Erin, is like just the more question asking, in general. And God, like if I could go back and do I would do so many things differently. The hindsight is 2020 is so real, and thankfully we are, learning so much more. Many of us, I would venture to say most people still are not, but there are more and more people who are asking questions and digging deeper and learning. And, it's just so weird to think about, like, this acne, that is literally like the excuse I used to get on birth control. I mean, that is not the reason I got on birth control, but that is the excuse I used. And it was a very valid excuse at the time because it was really bad. But, like I don't know now, like I know so much more now, than I did then. And thankfully it was a blessing. I did not do well with it, with the birth control, and I wasn't even on it for like 2 years total. I'm grateful for that, but there's so many things I just accepted. Like I just accepted birth control is what you do when you want to have sex. That's all. I just accepted it.
Yeah.
I didn't even question it. Gardasil, this is absurd to me now, but like I was literally like, and probably some other people on this call, was like at the high end of the range of when you were still allowed to get it. And I was like, I gotta get in there and get it because I'm about to age out of my, like literally that's what I did. I am like horrified at myself now, like, because I just feel so differently, personally. And that's obviously a personal choice, but I would have done so many things differently. And that also just brings me back to like this idea of like we're learning, and so we can pass that on to other people, and as parents, I love hearing, oh my God, it just makes my heart so happy hearing about the parents who've shared in this conversation so far, like how you're teaching your boys, and your girls, like how you're teaching your kids in general, like what you're passing on and how you're empowering them. Because I think one of the most important things is that, like, asking questions, just teaching. And even like Jeanette, when you're like, are you sure? Like, and we're asking people like, are you sure that's true? Because I heard this. Like, I think that comes from like our own intuition. And I think that's something like we're honing, like we're asking those questions because there's something inside of us that's like, wait, is that something feels a little off? Like it's so weird to me that I just didn't think that way, when I was young. I wasn't like, oh yeah, like that's a little funny that they're telling me to take this pill, and like nobody needed that in all the years before birth control existed. Like what, or I don't know, just like there's like this underlying truth that I'm always trying to like get at. And like you with the nervous system, Amanda, to me it's like the circadian health and like that quantum biology, like that approach to health feels so true to me. There's still so much to learn, but so much of it feels so like true at its core. And like ultimately so much of that comes back to nature, and like we are part of nature. We were designed to coexist with nature. We were designed to be like balanced and fueled and kind of set up for success by nature, and create healing in our bodies from nature, like so much of that. And thankfully there's more people asking questions about these kinds of things now and exploring these kinds of things. And I just cannot wait for it to make its way into like mainstream medicine, because it's not there yet. But thank God there's so many more of these kinds of conversations that we're having, like, so for ourselves, but also for all the everyone, older generations and younger generations, right? Like it's such a peaceful thing to start to learn and understand your body in that way. So you always have these like truths to come back to: nature, nervous system, community, connection. It's beautiful. Yeah.
What a beautiful conclusion to an amazing conversation. You could not have wrapped that better. That was so wonderful. But I think it opened a door for a part 2 of women's health, which is our intuitive health and the natural gifts that we as women have that is from this biology and with this biology. And I'd love to bring us back to dive into that part of women's health and our intuitive nature and how those things are connected. So well done closing us and opening the door for the next conversation, because I look forward to doing that. So amazing. Any last thoughts before we say see you next time?
I will just say, I mean, because I just expressed such like horror at so many of my young person decisions, like I also have grace for myself. We don't know, you know, and also like we're bio individual. We all have to make our own decisions and choices. So I think it's just important to say that and remember that, you know, across the board in these conversations.
Absolutely. I think fundamentally for life, but even for health, if we want to zoom in on that part of it, you make the best decision you can with the information you have at this moment. You can try to acquire new information to be able to make the decision, but ultimately, if you have to make a decision, you make the best decision you can with the information that you have. And when you learn new information, that creates an opportunity for you to change something that you can change in that moment, right? So no guilt for past decisions. I have plenty of them myself that I could stay awake every night thinking about, but ultimately, yes, so much grace for ourselves that we made the best decision we could with all the information that we had, and it was a different world then than it is now. So yes, beautifully said. Amazing. Well, thank you all for being here and sharing your stories. And I look forward to part 2 and all the other conversations that we do like this, because they are awesome. So thank you all. See you next time.